Hi. Hello. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Welcome to this morning's October 30th, October 29th. Take a Stand Against Hate, a dialogue with the Asian American Pacific Islander community of the greatest city in the world, Los Angeles. Go Dodger Blue, go Laker Purple and Gold. We are still celebrating the joy of being the city of two champions, but also that we are mindful that we are all as individuals champions of what it means to provide equal rights and opportunities, safety and protection for our Los Angelino citizens here in this great city in California. I'd just like to start off with welcoming each and every one of you. Thank you very much for your participation. This event is sponsored by KCIE Strategies, KC Strategies, the mayor's office, Eric Garcetti's office, the Civil and Human Rights Department for the City of Los Angeles, David Ruse, Councilman of the Great Fourth District's office, as well as three Consulate General offices in Los Angeles, the Consulate General of Japan, the Consulate General of Korea, the Consulate General of the Philippines. So salamat po, kamsahamnida, and arigato gozaimasu. Thank you so very much for your participation. I want to throw it to the executive director. She started out just this year, pre-pandemic, February 2020, being appointed by the great mayor, Eric Garcetti, in heading a department that oversees the addressing of systemic racism and bias in the areas of commerce, of employment, of education, and housing. And she oversees this department that looks to combat hate crimes and leveling the playing field across all our community workplaces in our great city. So I give it over to Capri, who has some few remarks and some introductions to be made. So thank you very much, Capri, for joining us, and I throw it all to you.
Thank you so much, Tamlyn. Really appreciate you being here with us today. I'm very grateful for the opportunity for us to share what the Civil and Human Rights Department is doing, but to also be here for our community in need. We do know that hate crimes have gone up with all groups, and unfortunately, this type of forum is something that's happening all over the country. And as Los Angelinos, we are messengers, and we are better than hate in Los Angeles. And I think it is really important for us to celebrate the mosaic of Los Angeles. And I think as we speak today and we learn more about how we can serve all populations and to prevent hate, we can move forward and be the message center and truly be the city of angels. Just wanted to acknowledge a few folks. I do know that you gave shout outs to all the folks on our panel. I am excited about the opportunity for us at the Civil and Human Rights Department to address all of the things you mentioned. We have an amazing team, and I'd like to really thank Francisco Ortega, who's hiding on the other side of the screen right now. But Francisco, thank you for your leadership and for making this happen. Say hi to the folks, of course, to Cindy Shin from KC Strategies, and our council generals that have joined us, and the mayor is also going to acknowledge you in just a moment. But I have the privilege of bringing forward one of our amazing commissioners from the Civil Rights Commission. And I would really just like to yield the floor to Commissioner Abigail Zielinski. She is a first generation Filipina American, runs her own employment practice. She's also a lawyer, and she has the opportunity to focus on wage and hour class actions, discrimination, harassment issues. She served on APA boards over the past 20 years, including the Filipina American Library, and SIPA and Historic Filipino Town. And then she also is the current president-elect of the Philippine American Bar Association. And without further ado, I give you our very own community leader and Commissioner Abigail Zielinski.
Thank you, Capri, for the introduction. And I really appreciate having this forum and listening to this panel today. As Capri said, I'm Abigail Zielinski. I'm a proud Filipino American and a proud member of the Asian and Pacific Islander community. With the president who's given a green light to racist, to attack the AAPI community with xenophobic terms, it's no wonder that there's been an exponential rise in hate against the AAPI community locally and across the nation. Since the onset of this pandemic, there's been a documented increase in the number of incidents against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders involving racist slurs, shunning, anti-immigrant nativism, bullying, and unfortunately, even unprovoked violent attacks. It seems that not a day goes by without watching another viral video of an AAPI subjected to this racism and hate. According to Stop AAPI Hate, a reporting center from A3PCon, and I know that Manju's here, A3PCon and Stop AAPI Hate documents hate incidents from across the country against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And in the 6-month period between March and August, there were 2,500 hate incidents reported nationwide. But we all know this doesn't give the full picture of the hate incidents and hate crimes that are happening across the country and in our great city of LA. This past July, the AAPI commissioners of the city of LA met virtually with Mayor Garcetti to specifically discuss the rising hate against our community. During that meeting, LAPD Deputy Chief Dominic Choi shared some statistics with us, which showed a 4-fold increase in reported hate crimes in the city of LA. Sadly, though, the actual numbers are much higher since our community members are often apprehensive about reporting these hate crimes. The issue, therefore, is if hate incidents and hate crimes aren't reported, then they can't be investigated and they cannot be addressed. Not all is dire, however. There are many in our community who are working tirelessly to address the racism and xenophobia Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in Los Angeles are facing on an increasing basis. Our panel today includes them. They're going to discuss what's being done currently and some ideas on what can be done to address and importantly, to combat hate against our community. But before the panel discussion gets underway, I want to introduce Mayor Garcetti, who has worked many years championing the AAPI community in Los Angeles. I remember first meeting Mayor Garcetti in 2002 when he was then council member for CD 13, and he sponsored a motion officially designating historic Filipino town. Mayor Garcetti has allowed his entire career to be shaped by his deep commitment to justice, dignity, and equality for all people. And now some words from Mayor Garcetti.
Hello, I'm Mayor Eric Garcetti. Today, you will hear from some incredible leaders, all affirming in one loud and clear voice of fundamental truth about Los Angeles. This is a city of belonging, a place where our strength is in our people, and people who come from all over the world, who have brought their values and voices to this global city. And we will always stand up for our people and stand strong against bigotry and discrimination. It's what brings us together today. And let me thank the Civil and Human Rights Department for hosting this important forum. And let me also thank and acknowledge our partners, Councilmember David Ryu, Consulate General of Japan, Consulate General of the Republic of Korea, and Consulate General of the Philippines, as well as KC Strategies. I want to thank you all for participating in this absolutely critically important discussion and sharing your stories. And I want to make sure that members of our Asian Pacific Islander communities who have experienced bigotry know loud and clear, we stand with you and will always fight for you. So stay safe and stay healthy. I send my strength and love.
Thank you so very much, Mayor Garcetti, the son of Gil Garcetti, another well-regarded LA official here in the great city of Los Angeles. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished, our really super cool, our super special panel here to discuss our stories and what we can do as individuals, as organizations, and as community members of our great city. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you, again, I said the great 4th District, Los Feliz and Sherman Oaks and all that great part of LA. He represents the 4th District, David Ryu. He has been always committed to putting transparency and engagement with the community, with the citizens of Los Angeles, and trying to unify and unite and work with every single neighborhood to empower all the Los Angelinos' voices in City Hall. So, ladies and gentlemen, David Ryu. I'd also like to introduce to you Deputy Chief of Los Angeles Police Department, Deputy Chief Blake Chow, who is, excuse me, the commanding officer of the Transit Service Bureau, providing security and protection for all rail and train services within the city of, rail and bus services within the city of Los Angeles. I already had the pleasure of introducing to you Capri Maddox, the Executive Director of Civil and Human Rights Department of the great city of Los Angeles. But I also have the pleasure of introducing to you two more members of our distinguished panel. Manjusha or Manju Kulkarni of Asian Pacific Planning and Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Center, or affectionately known as A3PCON, who leads a coalition of over 40 community-based organizations that serves and represents our completely diverse and golden, we're not just yellow, we're not just brown, we're golden AAPI community that counts over 1.5 million here in the county of Los Angeles. And last but not least, I would like to introduce to you Hong Lee, who is a hate crime victim but turned social activist who collaborates with the LA Hate Crime Initiative, and persons who have received or are on the receiving end of racial harassment are referred to her for help. And she also is in collaboration with LA-versus-hate.org, a program within LA County to address hate crimes within our city. So this is our distinguished panel of speakers, of community members, of leaders, of persons whom we can take a signal from, a lead from in discussing these uncomfortable and sometimes very difficult conversations as to how we can all take a stand against hate. So I'd like to just give it to Councilman Ryu, if you'd like to have any introductory remarks to begin our wonderful program. Thank you, Councilman Ryu.
Thank you, Tamlyn, a proud Council District 4 and Los Feliz resident. Thank you for being our moderator today. And I do want to thank all of our incredible panelists that is joining us today. The Consul General of Japan, the Consul General of Republic of Korea, the Philippine Consulate General. I also want to give a shout out to the Thai Consulate, who I see on the call as well, KC Strategies, Mayor Garcetti's office, and of course the Civil and Human Rights Department for co-sponsoring this event. You know, growing up as an Asian American, I witnessed firsthand how immigrants and minority groups could be targeted and often are the victims of hate. The LA riots in 1992 really shook our community. And in the aftermath, I was involved in community mediation efforts at the time. And part of the reason I got involved with politics was to make sure that it never happened again. Fast forward today, anti-Asian hate crime and incidents has rose dramatically after COVID-19 pandemic hit. Just between the short period between March 19th and August 5th of this year, Stop AAPI Hate received 2,583 reports of anti-Asian incidents nationwide, with 7 out of 10 involving verbal harassments, including racial slurs, name callings, and profanities. And physical assaults made 9% of the incidents, or roughly 240 acts of physical violence just by August. Also alarming was that one in 7 of these incidents were young people under the age of 20, and Asian American women were 2.4 more times likely to be discriminated. Now, these figures should be shocking to all of us, but it comes as no shock when the highest leader of our land is spewing this hateful rhetoric. Trump has continued to stoke the flames of racial fear and hatred. He has repeatedly referred to COVID-19 as the China virus and used other racially motivated terms. And these hateful words have real life consequences. Our country is strong because of its diversity. Los Angeles is strong because of our diversity, and we will not be deterred by hurdles of hatred and ignorance. An attack against any member of the Asian American community is an attack to all of us. And this is why we value these beliefs, and we stand in solidarity with each other.
Thank you, Councilman Ru. Thank you so very much. The Deputy Chief Blake Chow of LAPD, we'd like to have you give a few words as to how you'd like to introduce yourself to our audience here on Facebook and in future screenings of our wonderful panel. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Deputy
Absolutely. Thank
Chow.
you very much. It's such an honor to be part of this distinguished panel. And Francisco and I go way, way back. I must be a decade or more now, but it really is an honor. You know, I just want to reiterate what the council member had said. I was just speaking with my cousin, and my family came to this country in 1913. And when you hear the stories about the issues that they had to deal with as they came over, trying to pursue the American dream, and all the discrimination and issues that they had faced, you would think that fast forward to 2020, we had made some progress, but it is very disheartening to see that a lot of these issues are still popping up even almost 100 years later. And COVID has really made it much, much worse, or maybe it's made it just more apparent. I think, unfortunately, and this is how much work we have to do, society has a history of blaming other groups for problems. And that's because that's the easy way out. Instead of coming together and tackling a problem as a community and looking for a solution, it's much easier to blame a group or another community for a problem that's seeing. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. I have never seen as much divisiveness in society in quite a long time. But from my perspective, again, as Chief Choi had mentioned, when I look at our statistics and I'm only seeing 14 anti-Asian hate crimes reported for the whole quarter of 2020, I know it's significantly underreported. So we have our work cut out for us. We have to, as a group, we need to take a stand as a community that this type of behavior is not tolerated, and we have to encourage people to report it so that we can get a general picture as to what the problem is, and we can, as a group, address this problem head on and figure out what best to do. But again, you have all of our support from the LAPD, and of course, Chief Moore. We're solidly behind this effort, and it is significant, and we must do something as a community, as a group, to tackle this problem head on.
Thank you, Chief Chow. Thank you very much for your introductory remarks. It is quite a battle to be able to both protect and to serve our community, but also being of Asian American descent must be another consideration that you have to deal with in times like this. So thank you very much for your service. I'm going to throw it over to you, Manju, as to what you would like to introduce yourself, how you would like to introduce yourself to our audience watching today, and just a few words as to what A3PCon. We all know what A3PCon is, but some of us who are watching may not know that this is a wonderful resource. Take it away, Manju.
Thanks so much, Tamlyn, for that generous introduction, and to Francisco, Cindy, Abigail, and so many others who are behind today's event. It's really an honor and privilege to join with Capri, Maddox, with Councilmember Ru, with Deputy Chief Chow, and Ms. Hong Lee for today's really important panel, as well as with the Consulate Generals and the Mayor. As folks know, we've seen a real emergence of COVID-19 related hate against our Asian American communities over the past 8 months. And sadly, here in Los Angeles, we saw it even before we had a single confirmed case of COVID-19 here in Los Angeles County. And that was when a young man in a local middle school was physically attacked and verbally assaulted, really just for being Asian American. He was told to go back to China, and when he said he wasn't Chinese, he was punched in the head over 20 times. So that's when AppCon decided to get involved in this issue. We began to see that emergence, not only in incidents like that, but even just everyday occurrences where grandparents who walk their grandchildren around the neighborhood were getting attacked, individuals were being refused service at stores, ride-hailing companies. And so we created Stop AAPI Hate with Chinese for Affirmative Action and also with San Francisco State University. I want to thank Councilmember Rue for sharing some of our statistics, which are really important, I think, for folks to know. And our newest numbers are that 2,700 individuals from 47 states and the District of Columbia have now reported an incident to us, again, in just the 8 months since we launched on March 19th. And so this is extremely troubling. We know that it's widespread, though we have a large number of cases here in California, because of course, we also have a large population of Asian Americans. Additionally, you know, we have seen 40% happen at businesses, almost that same number at public streets, public parks, and on public transit. And so these are issues we need to come together to solve. And I want to say too, in terms of our local data, we know that in Los Angeles, in the city of Los Angeles, we have 114 incidents that have been reported to us. And in LA County, over 200. So it's so important that we come together today to really examine these issues. Stop AAPI Hate just last week issued a report on the return of yellow peril. So folks who are knowledgeable about Asian American history know that unfortunately we've been hit by this too many times. In the 1800s, it brought about the Chinese Exclusion Act. The yellow peril was then weaponized against Japanese American communities in the incarceration in the 1940s. And we're seeing it again now. I'm really happy that we're here with our local officials who've been so supportive of us and our work. And we look forward to helping to solve this problem moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very much, Manju. I'm going to start the discussion, and it's going to start with Hong, because I'm going to ask you both those questions as to how you would like to introduce yourself to the audience who's watching here today, who is here to receive a little inspiration, some answers, and resources as to how we can combat anti-Asian racism. So I'd like to begin with you, but with the question is, how has this pandemic-related rise in anti-Asian racism impacted you personally? And what propelled you to your specific area of service? Because I knew about your story when it happened, and just as a tangent, I know about the story of Esther Lim. And you two have been at the forefront locally, it seems, the grassroots activists who have started what it means to be taking a stand against anti-Asian racism. Hong?
Yes, thank you so much. Since my incident occurred in August of 2020, multiple victims have actually came forward, and 5 actually contacted me directly to inform me that they were also assaulted by the same man. Since then, LAPD has forwarded the case to the prosecutor's office for review. And due to the responding officer's lack of action when he came to attend to my incident, LAPD now is going to be retraining all of their patrol officers on how to properly address hate crimes and hate incidents. And this is going to be done by November of 2020. Other victims are now contacting me directly to ask for guidance and support on what to do next when they experience a hate crime or a hate incident. I'm actually referring them to Esther Lim, who then connects them to the proper hate crime division in order for them to get the police report. And they are also being referred to 211 and the LA-versus-hate.org in order to report their acts of hatred. And the victims are then able to get connected to different resources, including counseling, assistance with any medical needs, reimbursement for loss of wages, and advocacy, for example. And I'm also collaborating with LA County on the LA versus Hate initiative in order to put an end to hate crime in all of LA County. LA County is also connecting me to victims that are expressing that they would also like to come forward to speak up about the incident that they experienced so that others will never have to experience the same thing as well.
Mm.
And I'm also collaborating with Esther on some pamphlets that she created in order to help first-generation immigrants on how to report hate crimes. And these pamphlets are step-by-step instructions that provide in their own native language that provides details on how to report hate crimes. And as of today, we are actually working on looking for funding in order to provide these pamphlets to those that need this information. And last but not least, I've also contacted the owner of the restaurant to ask what are the next steps they are going to take in order to address these type of incidents that occur in the future. But unfortunately, that met with negative results, but we are requesting mediation. So it's been a very busy last 2 months. However, it's been very, very productive.
Yeah, well, thank you so very much for your unexpected activism in working to build our communities against anti-Asian racism and in our city. So thank you so very much for being spirited enough and being spiritful enough to do this hard work, because it's about making those efforts together in making sure that our community members feel safe, feel listened to, and feel heard. Just a quick short background in telling why I'm so interested in this. I'm the daughter of an LAPD officer. Actress Tamlyn Tomita in the 1970s, in 1975, formed the first bilingual police unit in the United States. It was called Asian Task Force, a unit of 9 Asian American Pacific Islander officers who was bilingual, who were dealing with the new waves of Asian American Pacific Islander immigrants in the 70s. And it changed the city. And because new immigrants were not sure of how to deal with police, how to deal with authority, how to deal with the law, they looked to this Asian task force, went out to the communities speaking in their mother tongues in order to connect and make sure those community members felt listened to and felt heard. So I feel like this is a circle, this is a connection, this is about relearning our history and not forgetting it, that we all have been through this together. And it's not just for the AAPIs, it's not just for our Latino communities, it's not just for our Black communities, it is not just for our Indigenous communities. That LAPD, that the City of Los Angeles, that the Mayor's Office, that our LA City Council, that our LA County Commission, County Board of Supervisors can do this hard work. And I'd like to throw it back to Councilman Rue, because this is about attacking it at more of a employment, education, housing, city community level. What resources do you know of that are combating hate crime in our great city?
I forgot to unmute myself. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Thank you. And I just want to first thank Hong Lee for joining this call and for her courage, for
Yes.
turning this negativity into positivity. And hearing her voice, she seems very timid, but she is roaring like a tiger. So thank you for turning your negativity into positivity. But yes, we have a lot of tools at our disposal to proactively stand up to hate.
Tell us all about them.
But we need more, especially at the federal government level, specifically when it comes to funding our security improvements and coordinating with local and state efforts. So first off, tracking data is crucial. I've been working on this for years to make Los Angeles a leader in hate crimes reporting. And one of the first things I did was the most basic thing that LA didn't have. And that was to disaggregate hate crimes data from other crimes so that we could actually understand and target our response in the most effective way. Now, with this new data, I went further and I co-introduced a hate crimes legislation instructing LAPD to report to City Council on reported hate crime trends and our efforts to respond, as well as asking LAPD to look for any federal, state, and local fundings that could be used to help enhance security around vulnerable facilities in LA. As a result of my legislation, to track this hate crimes. To no one's surprise, we found dramatic increases even before COVID-19.
Right.
The report came back to City Council in January of this year, and we found that in 2019 alone, there was a 10.3% increase in hate crimes across the city of LA. But this was a 40.6% increase since we started tracking in 2016. But now, because we have this data, we are working on a tailor-made response, because and we also have the ability to better collaborate and share this information, because information sharing helps to protect vulnerable communities. And LAPD, along with the Jewish Federation, is developing on an innovative communication tool similar to the Community Security Initiative that JFED pioneered. And this tool would allow for targeted communications between our vulnerable institutions. So basically, if a hate crime or incident is reported, all nearby institutions would be immediately notified. And lastly, we found out through all of these studies, my office found out that many institutions don't have the funding needed to protect themselves. And we can't wait for the legislative process to protect vulnerable communities, which is why I went ahead and dedicated a portion of my office discretionary funds to a hate crime security fund. So every institution, any institution, can be awarded up to $3,000 for security upgrades, staff trainings, and more. So those are what we have today.
Thank you, Councilman Wu, for your words. And it's a testament to the fact that LA City Council had voted to support the bill that was going through the U.S. House of Representatives and was voted against to. We won't go into politics today. We are only 5 days away, but we know that there's a lot to do on a local level, on a state level, as well as a federal level. But I have to applaud all the efforts of our city council and our county board of supervisors in doing the hard work, in making sure that we do take a stand. And thank you. Deputy Chief Chow, what has and how has LAPD address this uptick in anti-Asian racism, crimes, harassment, verbal harassment in our communities in Los Angeles? And what can LAPD do about it? And what can we do to help LAPD?
Well, thank you. A great question. It's really a kind of a multifaceted approach. I wanted to commend Hong for her story. I mean, as difficult as that is to watch, if we had not seen that, then the larger society in general would think that there's not a problem. Mm-hmm. And so in some respects, that's become kind of a again, an unfortunate incident, but it's a way for us to reiterate the fact that we still do have a problem out there. We have a significant problem. But as she mentioned, from LAPD standpoint, just from internally, we have a lot of training we need to do so that our officers, almost 10,000 of them now, know exactly what a hate incident is, and when they get called out to that call, they handle it properly and they take it seriously, because we have to document this. We have to show empathy for the victim, and we have to respond appropriately. If it becomes a hate crime, our report will allow us to take that incident and take it over to the city attorney or the district attorney and prosecute it as an actual crime. But it is important for our people to know that even if it does not appear to be a crime, it still rises to the level of a hate incident, and we still need that. We still need that documented. From a community education standpoint, as you know, LAPD has had community forums that have been in place, probably going back to the early 1990s. African American Forum, the Hispanic Forum, we have the API Forum, etc. Those are perfect vehicles to get the message out about these types of incidents and the type of education that we need out to the community. And as the council member had said, it's a great vehicle where we can actually push this information out to members of the community who can then push it out to other larger groups in the community. But I think, what we really need to do as a group, and where LAPD needs help, is, as we had discussed when this forum first started, we need to together just continually educate the public about the fact that those types of incidents and those types of behaviors are not tolerated. And we need to educate people that if it happens, we need to know about it and we need to report it. In addition to really kind of setting the bar to everybody else up there, that type of behavior is not appropriate.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
as I mentioned, it's kind of a multifaceted approach, I think, that will help us chip away at this problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just want to throw something to you from way back in the day because I had read your bio and your resume coming to LAPD in 1990, if I am correct.
Yes.
My father had retired in 1984. So the work that he had done provided that kind of legacy for Asian American police officers in our LAPD. So I know of Dominic Choi, I know of Deputy Chief Hara, Terry Hara. So it's this kind of, when I see an Asian American face in an LAPD uniform, it brings me pride, but also it's to remind you that those officers of Asian Task Force actually went out into the community when we were able to gather. We're still not able to, and gave lessons to our senior citizens, our elderly, as to how to power their chi and to say no or stop to something that's bad that's happening to them, or to something to somebody that they're witnessing, a crime that's being committed against. So it's that kind of tactile, that kind of personal information that I'd like to just reiterate, that it means about each and every one of us, no matter what departments we come from, no matter what communities we live in. It's about teaching others as to how to stop something when you see something bad. Do something about it. If you can't say anything because of our lack of English, or because we're scared to confront or antagonize, it's just to simply sit aside that person who's being verbally attacked, racially attacked, verbally abused, and say, I'm here with you. It's those kinds of, those actions, those interpersonal connections that make us feel a little bit safer, a little bit more protected, and a little bit more served as co-citizens here in Los Angeles. Thank you so very much, Chief Chow. Capri, this is your turn. What tools does this newly formed Civil and Human Rights Department have in combating hate crimes? And it is such a big and a large conversation that we're all having. But what can the Civil and Human Rights Department do for our citizens, as well as all the employers and employees across this great city?
Thank you so much, Tamlyn. Really appreciate the question, and the fact that I'm a former prosecutor kind of like dovetails into this role as well. Some of you may know that I served as the neighborhood prosecutor for the Wilshire Police Station over a decade ago, and I had the privilege of actually serving Koreatown during that time before the Olympic Station was opened. And so we did a lot of work with the API community as it relates to hate crimes and hate incidents. Even then, but the numbers have just soared off the charts now. And I want to be sure that we work on this issue with all of our tools. One, I wanted to announce that we do have 3 commissioners from our operation with us. We have Courtney Morgan Green, that you may see on the screen. We also have Irma Nunez, as well as Melanie De La Cruz. Really grateful for their support. And we actually have over 30 commissioners and advisors that help us lead the department as we address hate crimes and hate incidents. And there are other partners that we have too. As Councilman Rue mentioned, the Jewish Federation and even other members of the Jewish community, the Anti-Defamation League and the AJC have been helping us, and agreed that ADL is actually in discussions with us on helping us to do tracking as well. I wanted to acknowledge the fact that the Stand Against Hate campaign that LA County is doing is something that we're a part of as well. I actually saw Hong Lee on a call just yesterday, and I appreciate the fact that she was mentioning Ms. Lim's book and opportunity. And I think there are little booklets that cost just $2 each that are information and resource tools for victims of hate. And she gives them out free out of her own pocket. Ms. Lim does, in cooperation with Ms. Lee. And I think it's really important for us to appreciate that anyone can make a difference and everyone should try. And I appreciate Hong Lee turning a negative into a positive to be of service to our community. And I know she's a future leader of Los Angeles. Wanted to also say the fact that we actually have anti-bias training that we requested funding for. and that Councilman Rue has been totally supportive in this space and voted just a couple of days ago to help us with some of those resources. I think that when you want to know where your values are, look where the resources are placed. And I appreciate Councilman Rue's leadership in that space. Also wanted to let you know some of our corporate partners are helping us with community unification events. So particularly as we reconstitute society and we are able to all get back together, you'll see more hate crime prevention events like unity events and fairs to learn about each other's culture. Because when you have your cultural competency for all groups, you're less likely to be engaged in hateful behavior, regardless of who's tweeting what from where. I want to be sure that you know that we have tools for the private sector as well. So if someone violates your civil rights in the private sector, we have Commissioner Abigail Zielinski that was on the call earlier with us that has a tool to bring cases against people that violate your rights in commerce. That means public accommodation and access or lending practices, et cetera. Also education, employment, and housing. And so when you think about these areas, we're not fighting for justice and equity on one side, we're doing it in a 360. And that brings me to the last point of the upward mobility programming that we'll be doing on our equity and empowerment piece. So we want to help people get into the middle class and beyond, and for us to highlight the folks that are making a difference for us. I don't have to tell you that we have a number of people that are leaders in healthcare, our essential workers, et cetera. And so we need to highlight and celebrate our cultures in the mosaic of Los Angeles. And then lastly, I think I saw something in the chat. We will be sending referrals to the city attorney's office and the district attorney's office. As a former prosecutor, that's something that's natural to me, and working with our LAPD partners that are really stepping up in this space. So thank you for the question.
Thank you so very much, Capri. And all the new work that's the Civil and Human Rights Department is doing. Thank you so very much. Manju, the question from me and for all the panelists, there is suffice it to say, a growing negative rhetoric and a toxicity that's being targeted, and that the API community is being targeted. It hurts me to say. And from this current administration, it's really no help of that he spews every day the words Kung Flu and China virus, and makes those Americans of Asian descent here feel unsafe, unwanted, invisibilized, otherized. But that's that. What we can do as a city is another answer that we're all seeking here. How do we allies, how do us advocates help to combat this troubling trend in our city? And hopefully that will spur on other actions that are proactive for our state and for our country.
Thank you, Tamlyn, for that question. Well, first off, I would recommend that folks, if they've experienced an incident, to report to stopapihate.org. I've put it in the chat box. Our form is available in 12 Asian languages, which, many, oftentimes it's hard to get language access for our limited English proficient community members. And we analyze the data every single day, which is why we're able to provide it to our elected officials. What's important, though, too, in addition to reporting, is to know that we are actually providing direct assistance, providing resources to the community, and working with local, state, and federal elected leaders. And what I want to say about that is we're actually putting together a legal clinic for those who might have experienced these incidents. We have resources on the website, including upcoming is a 50-state chart about what you can do in your state in terms of filing a complaint. Here in California, we're lucky to have Department of Fair Employment and Housing, which Stop AAPI Hate is working with to get these incidents resolved and to prevent such things from happening again. And I want to say, of course, if it is a crime to seek out 911 for help and assistance, we know that from our data, the vast majority are hate incidents and don't involve an underlying crime. But for those that do, we absolutely should reach out. And then lastly, the thing that you've alluded to is, you know, too many of our elected officials have resorted to using racist rhetoric. And so it's really important that we hold our elected officials accountable because they are essentially putting people in harm's way when they do that and when they don't condemn what's going on. And sadly, we saw in Congress when Representative Graceman brought a resolution just to condemn it, that there were 150 of our elected officials from one of our parties who could not even condemn racist rhetoric. And that's just unconscionable. It really is. But you know, luckily here in Los Angeles, we have a different type of elected official. We have support from Councilmember Rue in our city council, our mayor, from our CHRD, our civil rights entity. And so it's important that we continue to work with them and that they work with us as they are already doing, because that's the only way that we address this issue and prevent it from continuing to be a menace to our communities.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Manju, for those words and for the actions that we can all take in supporting organizations such as yours, is the umbrella organization for that coalition of community-based organizations that serve our AAPI communities. I just want to pivot back to Capri also, because Manju had said about holding our, because again, it's the top level right now who is spewing such, hateful rhetoric against our AAPI community specifically, as well as other communities of color. Capri, knowing that the Civil and Human Rights Department is there to combat racism amongst the departments of employment and housing, education, how do you foresee in holding our elected officials or appointed official accountable when they speak publicly? I know I'm putting you on the spot right there, but these are kinds of questions that I believe the public wants to ask, and how we can help you support in what you need to do in order to have our elected officials and appointed serve us better.
Well, I say the first thing is to definitely call them out. That's the first thing. That's something that all of us can do as a community, because I think, you know, evil prevails when the righteous are silent, and we need to stand up, and we all need to stand together. And you don't have to be from that affected community to stand up against hate. And I think that's very important. And we at the city family have just had an event with the Civil and Human Rights Department, just had an event for the transgender community. And we're not going to fit every box, but hate is, you know, they say love is love is love. We believe that. We believe that here in Los Angeles. Our mayor believes that, our city council believes that, Councilmember Rue, etc. But we need to be sure that we know that hate is hate is hate. And I think wherever it is, we want to root it out early and often, because I've learned from my good friend Manju that after 9/11, we had hate crimes spike against Muslim Americans and people that are perceived to be Muslim. And those hate numbers have not gone down to their pre-9/11 numbers. And I think that is the thing that motivates us in this space. So wherever we are, whatever we do, we need to stand up and call them out and shut it down early and often, because it's just like a weed. If we allow the hate to grow and to thrive, it will choke all of us out.
Thank you. Because those are important words in making sure that we have people who listen to us and that if all we can do is call persons out, that is something we can do. No matter how small the action is as individuals, when it's collective with other voices, it becomes big and it becomes a movement. It becomes something that the department has to deal with and has to listen to. And I applaud you for saying those words, because just to say, simply call it out is something that, a mother would say to a child. But when we hear our elected and appointed officials say that, that's powerful enough, aligned with other voices, it becomes something that we can proactively participate in. So thank you for those words, Capri.
I think Councilman Rue would like to add
Yes,
something.
yes, Councilman.
Yeah, and as an elected official, I'd love to jump in here because
Thank you.
hold us accountable.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, there are 6 days left or 5 days left where this is how you hold us accountable. You vote. If you do not agree with your elected official, then this is where you show and cast your agreement or disagreement. So this is how it's not just speaking out, because I speak out against other elected officials. We in the city of LA, we're so proud to sign that, have a resolution to support Congresswoman Grace Meng's legislation to call out and condemn racism. I mean, something so basic that we all have taken for granted are coming up again. So if you don't speak up, if you don't call it out, if you don't exercise your power to vote, then you have no right to complain.
Yes.
And as an Asian American, we do know how we have always been the scapegoat. And we've always been like the model minority community used to wedge ourselves against other communities of color. And because America has a long legacy of racism and hate. And for Asian Americans, it's either treating us with fear or contempt, or at its very best, we're exotic and foreign, right? But as we've said in this Zoom again and again, the most disheartening thing is to see members of our own government in the highest offices perpetuate these destructive stereotypes. And you must speak out against that. As a matter of fact, but I do also want to mention, as president also of the API caucus for the League of California Cities, we came together to issue strong condemnation in the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes fueled by the pandemic. But as a persons of color and a community of color, we must all stand together, because when there's a crime against one of us, it's a crime against all of us, which is why we are also very proud that at the caucus, we quickly, and the API caucus is made up of Asian American elected officials up and down the state of California, that we quickly and strongly came out in support of Black lives.
Yes.
We stood in solidarity with our brothers and sisters of the Black Lives Matter Coalition. Further, even before the pandemic, when anti-Semitism was yet again rearing its ugly head, and Manju's on this call, because APCON helped to organize all of the Asian American community groups to come together to strongly condemn anti-Semitism and to stand in solidarity and in partnership with Jewish organizations to demand a swift action against a rise in hate. We have to, it's not just about us, it's about standing with all of our brothers and sisters, persons of color, those who are minorities, those who are disadvantaged, because when it affects one of us, it affects all of us. And in Los Angeles, there are 14% of our population in the county, in the city of Los Angeles, identifies as Asian American Pacific Islander. And I know I could personally attest to the fact that there are so many fears out there right now. This is why it's more important, like turn your fear into positivity, like Hong Lee did, and come together to support one another, as well as support all other minorities and persons of color.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the reminder, Councilman Rule. Elected officials and appointed officials have it tough because you're out there in the public eye and trying to do the hard work on behalf of all our community members. And being held accountable, that's a brave and courageous thing to say. So I thank you honestly for saying those words. Hong Lee, because of your newfounded activism and your role in yes, in trying to do the good work, you find that social media has been a wonderful tool for you in order to combat anti-Asian racism. How do you see that we as individual citizens, or perhaps as the department, can use social media as to combat anti-Asian racism or any racism against our members of our city?
I actually, when my incident occurred,
Mm-hmm.
I actually ended up sharing the video on social media on both Facebook and Instagram. And within hours, the video completely went viral. And within a few days, there were millions of views. And since then, I have been able to connect with various platforms that are fighting against racism and acts of hatred, including platforms such as Next Shark, Jackfruit, Asians with Attitude, Asian Dawn, Hate is a Virus, They Can't Burn Us All. And so we have been able to share these different incidents and hate crimes that are continuing to happen that rarely get media attention. However, there's now these platforms that we are all coming together as a community in order to talk about these issues. And by doing so, we're able to get one step closer to putting an end to hate crimes and hate incidents. And such as the LA County is also doing, they are actually using artwork in order to use on social media to raise awareness about the LA versus hate, to call 211, to go on laversushate.org. And so I strongly believe that social media is a very powerful tool to get access to different generations. But I also believe that what Esther Lim is doing with regards to the pamphlets and getting information to the other generations, I think that's also equally important as well.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so very much for that hard work that you guys have been doing. And it's only been 3 months in terms of being combatants, in being woman warriors against anti-Asian racism. So I applaud you. Thank you so very much. Deputy Chow, in terms of how these incidents of verbal harassment, of racial attack are committed against members of our city, does LAPD respond with a certain protocol, or what should we as citizens know what LAPD can do and cannot do in terms of these kinds of incidents? This is a big question that I have been wrestling with as well, because what can we do when we want to call the police versus call the cops? It's that kind of should I, do I want to, do I have to, or can I?
So the question is, should you? Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We want you to call 911, especially in situations where it looks like that individual is becoming threatening. We will dispatch an officer out there, and we do have protocols in place. I have the roll call training curriculum in front of me. Actually, we are training the officer where the officers have been trained.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, if it's a verbal issue with some hate speech, but there's not a crime, we will take an incident report.
Okay.
We can log that. We have a hate crime coordinator that works out of our detective bureau. Orlando Martinez, probably some of you have met him before. He is kind of the collector of all the hate incidents that we have in the city. And again, as I mentioned, if it is a crime, we will take that, we will initiate a criminal investigation. We may end up making an arrest at the time, depending upon what that individual's actions are. And that case will be presented to either a city attorney or a district attorney for criminal filing. But that is kind of our call for service protocol. But again, as I mentioned, we have all community forums, we have senior lead officers, we have the task force officers that your father was a part of at one point in time, mm-hmm. that are out there in the community that we have to continually educate the community. We need to bring this up at our CPAD meetings, at our forums and things like that, so that we increase the amount of education that we have out in the community about these types of issues.
Okay, I'm forgive me, Deputy Chief Chow. I'm going to do it personally. If looking to you in your uniform in that office, seeing police paraphernalia, you look like my father. So I need to ask you from a personal point of view, just as a person as a young girl, a young woman, just like Hong Lee. If I get harassed on a bus or in a restaurant or on the public street, what do you want me to do, Dad, Blake Chow? What do you want me to do? Not as a police officer, but as my father. And what am I supposed to do as a citizen of Los Angeles? Do I call the police? Do I call Councilman Rue? Do I call Manju at AtCon? Do I call CORD? Do I call CHRD? What do I do as a young person? It's like, do I record? Because these phones are ubiquitous. And this is an important tool to record incidents of racial abuse, of racial attacks. What do I do with the video? Who do I send it to? I think those are the practical questions that I think people in our community need to know. What can I do if it happens to me or if I witness it? And how can I be safe and make sure that the person who is being attacked is safe?
So, I have a 16-year-old daughter, and that's a great question, because I often ask myself, if my daughter was the victim of this, what would, as a father, what would I want? And I would want, first of all, I would want her to call the police so that somebody can show up. And if this individual behavior is escalating, the police can get there and handle that to make sure that, our victim is not harmed. And to your question, should we call the council office? Should we call these other entities that also work in partnership with us to deal with these hate incidents? The answer is yes, because this is really a team approach. And but the first thing that needs to happen is please please call 911 so we can get somebody out there, so that this incident, which is already dangerous enough as it is, does not escalate into something where you are harmed. As far as the video is concerned, yes, everybody has cell phone videos. Those have become very important for us, because that's evidence for us. That's evidence of the type of language, the motivation behind the actions. And what we'll look for is not only that type of video from the victim, but if there are other people that are around that also capture video, we'll want to talk to them and have those little video clips maybe emailed or sent over to us, so that they can become part of our bigger response.
Okay. Because it's that idea that if I can film an incident that happens to me or to someone else, I throw it up on social media just like Hong did. And it's that kind of immediate reaction that us citizens can do to activate journalists, to activate other community leaders, to draw attention. So it's knowing that LAPD, LASD, and the city and the county are all being proactive in committing to these kinds of actions in order to help the citizens, because it's the personal. Manju, it's like when I read your articles in Huffington Post, when I read the stories that you've collated, that you've collected, as well as the other reporter on the Huffington Post articles that you write. What are these stories? How do they affect you personally? And how do you echo what we can do as community members, as well as U.S. citizens on terms of a federal level? Because I know you're working on several tiers in terms of activism. What can we do and reporting to you and at Stop AAPI Hate?
Thank you, Tamlyn, for that question. And, I think really Ms. Lee's example is one that we should all take to heart, which is, despite how hard it is to report this, and, it really is sort of damaging to our psyche. It creates a feeling of otherness for us to be targets of racism, but it is so important. As has been said on this panel, we need to see the faces, hear the names to know how real it is. Often with just hearing data, it doesn't have that same impact. So yes. I just really want to thank her for that. And, as the deputy chief said too, when we have evidence, it helps to build a case. That's true not only for hate crimes, but also for hate incidents as well. Because, and what I want to say is that there is a lot of civil rights protections and enforcement that is available in California. So we shouldn't ignore that. If you know that what you've experienced is not a crime, I don't want folks to waste the time of our LAPD officers. I myself experienced one at the beginning of COVID-19, where at the hair salon, when it was still open, women next to me made racist comments about Chinese Americans, about their food, and about how they caused COVID-19. And so what I did, because I was jarred by it, but I felt safe enough that I told them what they were saying was racist. And so I think, one of the resources on our website is what you should do if you've experienced this, or what you can do if you're a bystander, like I was. If you feel like you're safe, you should say something to folks. And then you should also, where there's workplace discrimination, refusal of service at our grocery stores, our pharmacies, you should also file a complaint. And that's what we're here for. The last thing I want to say is APCON is part of the LA network of LA versus hate. So we are here to provide direct assistance to each and every person. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I will also put my email address in the chat for any folks that have experienced this and need that help, because that's what we're here for. We're one of the 6 community groups that is working with the Human Relations Commission to really combat this problem.
Oh, thank you, Manju. Capri, the idea that the chief said to call 911 because a crime has been committed. Can you please explain to me, because I'm not that well versed in what it means to be calling 211 or Crime Stoppers in order to report a hate crime incident that might not be criminal, but is still affecting a person of our great city?
Thank you for,
yes.
Yeah. So thank you for that question. And I know there's so many resources out here. You may think like, okay, I've been a victim of a hate incident and now I have to call 10 people. Definitely, I think, first of all, calling 911, if you LAPD still takes hate incident reports. And I know for sure because we get those documents, but I do think it's important for us to notify entities like APCOM, Stand Against Hate, and I'm sure Manju has put that in the chat today, and also the 211 number, just so that that information is documented. And I don't have to tell you, even when you're notifying LAPD on incidents, and I don't want to speak for Chief Chow, but I want to be intentional to let you know that the more information LAPD has, the more information, the more resources they can put on an area. And a lot of times hate incidents, can escalate into hate crimes. Yes. So you may have an incident where someone is coughing on people in line at the supermarket, and then that same person will maybe push someone, or if they are recorded, someone's recording them on the phone, then they're going to slap the phone out of your hand and break it and maybe assault you. So you can see how things escalate. So the more information that we all have, the better. I would say LAPD 211 for sure, and the Stop Hate, Stop AAP I Hate .org. I don't know if it's .org or .com. I know Manju just put in the chat. So it's really important for us to use those areas because information is power.
Absolutely. The one detail for me is that if someone should witness or experience a hate crime incident or a verbal assault, is there a time limit? If I experience something on a Sunday, is there a time limitation? Because sometimes in an emotional or on a personal level, when somebody has been at the brunt end in receiving that, how long should that person wait before calling to 911 or 211?
And I think that question I should direct to Chief Blake Chow on the timeline. I'll have him chime in on it, but I definitely would like, the more immediate someone can report an incident, the better it is. And I don't have my penal code in front of me to see what the statute of limitations is on it, but I do think doing it instantly, because you can prevent another crime against someone else. And again, like I said, with the escalation of incidents, from an incident to a hate crime, providing information can make all of the difference, because maybe the person in the second incident was able to get a good ID on that individual. Yep,
Yes.
they hang out at this shopping center. They drove away in this color car, and it was only, air quotes, a hate incident. But when they commit a crime, now LAPD knows to look at the video and to see what was happening there. And it's like, and then the blue car drove away quickly. Well, this time they have a license plate, boom, crime, you can be solved. So I want us to be intentional to make sure we share the information sooner rather than later. The other thing too, I think it's important to know, is that your memory, you'd be surprised. There's some people who can have a crime happen. Sometimes we don't remember what we ate for breakfast yesterday.
Right.
Especially me. But I think it's important to know that the fresher the details are, the better you are to document that information. And I'll let Chief Chow chime in if he has anything he'd like to add in that space.
Yeah, Chief. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Capri. Chief Chow, is there a time limitation, or what are the kinds of questions that a victim of a hate incident or a hate crime can be expected to answer?
We, just to reiterate, we do want that call as immediately as possible.
Okay.
Because a lot of hate incidents can escalate into hate crimes, because as you can see from some of the videos that we've seen, the behavior of that suspect escalates to the point where it's actually becoming physically dangerous for our victims. So we don't want that. We don't want to get to that point. So immediate call to 911. But if that's not possible, certainly calling as soon as possible, even if it's after the fact and maybe the suspect is gone, is also important, because as Capri had mentioned, oftentimes we'll take a hate crime incident or a hate crime report or a hate incident report, and we can, if this individual is responsible for multiple incidents, we can tie those together based on what people have seen. And if it becomes a point where we take those cases over to the district attorney or the city attorney, we can tie incidents together and get a stronger filing on those types of cases.
Okay. Thank you so much for. It feels like I'm putting everybody on the spot, but I just wanted to make this feel like it's a loose conversation. So I appreciate you guys jumping in with all the questions that I have to say. I see Councilman Rue raise your hand. What would you like to say, Councilman?
I just wanted to add in, and there's a great question from Commissioner Nunez who asked, how can undocumented immigrants from various countries be assured that they will not be deported if they report a hate incident or hate crime? Yes, in the city of Los Angeles, especially in the city of Los Angeles, where we have declared we are a sanctuary city and we help immigrants irrespective of their immigration status. So they will not be deported. As a matter of fact, I'll let Chief Blake Chow add more if he wants to, but basically the LAPD does not work with ICE, with the federal immigration officers at all. We do not exchange any information with them. I'll also let Manju speak as well. And their organization and the coalition that she was talking about, many of these same groups like Churla and other groups are actually immigrant rights groups.
Yes.
So they will go out of their way to protect your rights, even if you are undocumented. So do not let your immigration status or your language barrier or anything be a impediment to making these reports. And as Capri mentioned, we gave you like 10 different resources for you to report. And the important thing here is speak up, speak out. Now that might mean a lot of different things for other people, right? Like you could be like Hong Lee and really speak out. Post a video. You could contact LAPD. You could contact the coalition that APCON is part of. You could contact my office. Whatever you feel comfortable. The most important thing is, even if you're anonymous, help us document that incident, because it will show us what the trends are, what the alarming rates are, and how we could target, how LAPD how our nonprofits could target areas or different avenues to make sure that we use our resources as efficiently as possible.
Okay, thank you so much, Councilman Ru. Deputy Chow, Councilman Ru had referred to you as to LAPD not ensuring that undocumented citizens, undocumented persons won't be reported to ICE in terms of reporting hate crime incidents. Is that something we can entrust with LAPD?
Oh, absolutely. That I could not underline or reiterate that any stronger. We've had Special Order 40 since the late 70s that we do not ask about immigration status of anybody that we're interviewing, because that is not our concern. Our concern is to provide service to our communities. And we do need to capture that data, and we don't want to get in a situation where people are afraid to report things to us because then we don't really have the big picture.
Right, right. Thank you again, Deputy Chow. Deputy Chief Chow, and also Manju, I see your hand raised because Councilman will also refer to you as to what AFCON can do as well.
Right. Yeah. And I just want to reiterate that from our standpoint, all of the personal information that's provided to stop AAPI hate is confidential. We don't release any of it without your explicit permission. So I want to let folks know about that. And I also want to just point to the chat where I've added all of the members of our LA versus Hate Rapid Response Partner Network. There's so many groups. Councilmember Rue mentioned Cheerla and others. And really, it's important to remember that those individuals who are undocumented get just the same amount of protection and that they should not feel inhibited. And so for that reason, we want to encourage them to reach out to us, also to 211, and certainly to 911 if this involves a crime or exigent circumstances. So we want all of our community members to be involved in this effort, and we want to help each and every one of them.
Thank you so very much, Manju. It's nearing the bottom half of the hour, but thank you so very much for your participation. And we're going to take these last few minutes to wrap up. I'm going to begin with Hong because you have been so inspirational as to what we can do in terms of dealing with a negative incident and turning it, like Councilman Ruse had said, into positive action. And how would you like to leave us now? And as we carry on past the election next Tuesday, past this ongoing, however COVID-19 is going to play out and end, we have to continue to unite as AAPIs across all our communities of color. What would you like to leave us with? Because you've already done the work in trying to unify and try to provide tools for our AAPI members. What would you like to leave us with?
I would like to add that as victims or witnesses to acts of hatred, we need to continue to speak up. Exactly what Capri mentioned earlier. In my case, I asked for help for over 2 minutes and not a single person, nor the restaurant employees or the patrons around me assisted me during that time. And so if it just only took one person just to say, hey, stop that, that's not right, to just say something, not that it needed to result in any type of physical violence, but to stand there and speak up, especially when something isn't right, and not to be a bystander and to turn the other way and ignore it as if it wasn't happening. And so I am very grateful for these platforms and for this opportunity to raise awareness on these ongoing issues. And I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to put an end to these hate crimes and hate incidents that are continuing to occur.
Thank you so very much, Hong. Thank you so very much for all the work you do. And we're going to continue to champion you because we know that you champion others in times like this. So thank you so much. Manju, what remarks would you like to leave us with as the umbrella coalition of APCON? And knowing that, again, we, in working with over 40 of those community-based organizations, that our citizens can look to those those many resources in dealing with anti-Asian racism, but what can we do to help you and help the organizations that you foster?
Right. So, what I want to leave folks with is really what Capri mentioned in her remarks, which is, we're here for the long haul. Our organizations to support all of you, to support our communities, because we do know from 9/11 that there was an over 10-year backlash against part of our community, South Asians, Muslims, Arabs, and Sikhs. And that was when we only had, and I say only cautiously to say, we lost 3,000 of our fellow Americans that day. In America today, we have lost 225,000 people due to COVID-19. So unfortunately, excuse me, I expect this backlash to continue against our communities for some time. It's not going to end in a few days, and it probably won't end in a few months. And just like we're waiting for a vaccine, we are going to be waiting through what is happening in our country. And what Councilmember Rue said is so important, which is everyone needs to go out and vote if they can. We have an opportunity in what is the most critical election of our lifetimes to address what's happening, to prevent it from happening in the future. And we know a lot of our AAPI community members have been sitting on the sidelines in past elections. And I'll just share with you a quick clip that I saw on Twitter from Angry Asian Man. Not voting is like essentially going to a restaurant and paying for the food and letting someone else pick for you, right? We wouldn't let anyone do that for us when, as consumers, we shouldn't let others choose our futures as citizens of this great country. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Manju, and thank you for shouting out to Angry Asian Man. And actually, that is a great a blog, a website to refer to things all Asian American and Pacific Islander, but it's also been a great resource in looking at and seeing stories such as Hong Lee's and what we can do about it. So thank you so very much, Manju. Capri, I turn it to you as to again, because you started your newly appointed position as CHRD director pre-pandemic, and knowing that you've just worked through the pandemic, how can we as citizens continue to support you in your newly formed department as to how we can more effectively participate in supporting this department that serves all of us?
Well, thank you so much. I think definitely I may have dropped in the chat our website, which I'll read out, is civilandhumanrights.lacity.org. And to help us with the reporting process. I know we're wrapping up. I don't know if we're, I think we're pretty much at the time. Do you want me to close it out now?
Yes, that would be wonderful, because I just checked my time too, and it's like, 12:27.
Yes. And I'm super grateful for all of our panelists, and just want to make sure that we all stay in touch and we stay connected. We provided some resources here, and I'm hoping that we can add these to our website. I'm sure the council, direct folks to Councilman Rue's website. I'm sure his staff, I know Jackie is on the line doing a great job for us to make sure that all of these resources that are in our chat will be a part of Councilman David Rue's website. And I hope it's okay, Councilman, if I giving you that responsibility. It's the other way around. They give us direction, but we'll take the liberty here. Really wanted to thank you, Tamlyn, for doing this. You're a celebrity in your own right. Joy Luck Club, Karate Kid. I mean, you're someone, and you were so knowledgeable about this area. Wanted to thank Cindy Shin for her connection for us in this space, and just the work that Casey Strategies does with the media. And I just think that all of our panelists have done a fabulous job. Manju, someone I call on all the time, early and often, when she was just helping us yesterday with something. And of course, Deputy Chief Chow, someone that has been, a hero in Los Angeles for many years, and who really, walks the talk. And of course, I wanted to be sure that that we celebrate Hong as the next generation of leaders in this space. Have an opportunity to thank Francisco for all of his work from our team, and the mayor, for just kind of helping us to put this together. you don't have to be from the API community to really stand up against hate. As I said earlier, hate is hate is hate. And I really want to be sure that we deal with a couple of things as we close out, thinking about underreporting. We now know that is an issue. So we've given people enough tools and guidance on how to report crimes and incidents. The other thing I've been doing with some of my personal API friends, just for comfort, is to give them little alarms that say if you're afraid to go to the store, if you're having some issues or challenges, there are little alarms that they sell on Amazon for like $10, and you pull the plug and it kind of makes a piercing noise. I have one on my dog's leash or when I walk my dog and if I'm out by myself. So that's something that I know that I've done, personally for some of my friends and neighbors. I wanted to also let you know to use your talents. I think it was great that Esther Lynn and Hong Lee are, using, their talents to get the pamphlets out. I think when we have people who are artists, people who are doing art, making t-shirts and doing things of this nature, we need to hit it on all fronts. Just like any media campaign we would put together and marketing campaign, we need to stand against hate. And I know LA County is doing a great job in that space. If you are a witness to a hate crime or hate incident, I think it's very important to let you know, as someone, as Hong said earlier, be a good witness, be supportive. That if someone does a hate crime, don't compound the pain by being silent and knowing what's going on. We know that hate incidents are happening all over the country to a number of groups, particularly our API community. So we really want to stand up and stand up against hate. And then I love the idea about Manju's legal clinic that's going to be coming on board, the virtual legal clinic on what to do. So I think there are just so many, and then of course with us at the Civil and Human Rights Department, we have our website listed here, and you have an opportunity to even bring cases against individuals from the private sector. So as we wrap up, I just really wanted to thank everyone, thank Councilman Rue's team for, really helping us put this together as a co-host in a substantial way. And let's keep the faith and let's keep the fight against hate, because we are better than that here in Los Angeles. Shine on.